Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk about two NAS brands. Namely, I want to talk about TerraMater, one of the NAS brands you're seeing more and more here on YouTube, and how it compares against Synology. Now, we've already done hardware comparisons before, but what I've done now is I've booted up a Synology DS1019 Plus with a hard drive inside, and I've installed the latest version of DSM on this device, and we're going to see how it compares against TerraMater's own NAS here. This is the F5221, and this arrives with their TOS software, and we want to compare these two brands with their own software. I've already done full software overviews of both of these devices, so if you want to learn more about them specifically unto themselves, then do check out those videos. But for now, let's start comparing them. Now, what you're looking at here on screen right now is the TerraMater interface, the GUI. This is how you access it via the network or the internet if you set up internet connectivity, and it is meant to be the equivalent of a desktop interface of any operating system. I think it's highly stylized by Windows, that I'll explain throughout the course of this video. Alongside this, we have got the Synology here with DSM 6.2 in place. Now this, although it looks a little Androidy, is very stylized by Apple and their Mac operating system, OS X and Mac OS. So what we're looking at today is which one of these best vibes for you, because it's going to be very hard to say if one's better than the other. And in fact, both of them arrive with their own client software, if we put them on screen here, and these are available for both Windows and Mac, and these let you find the NAS on your local area network, and you can add internet-based ones as well, and you can configure them, add mapped network drives and more. So for those of you that wonder how the TerraMater, let's face it, in this comparison is going to probably be the underdog compared with Synology, the first thing we should do, let's show you how to map a network drive. Now, mapping network drives is important because so many of you out there, when you buy a NAS, aren't actually going to use these software interfaces that much. You want to use software that you're aware of using, Windows, Android, Mac, etc. So instead of using this interface in your web browser, what you want is the equivalent of Windows File Explorer, or of course the Mac equivalent. So what you need to do is go back to those client softwares and map a network drive. Now for Synology, if you want to map a network drive, you find the NAS, you search your local area network, you right click and you click Map Drive. It's as simple as that. You will put in your login credentials for that NAS. It will then find it. It will list all the folders that are on that NAS, and we'll go through that a little bit more later on. But we'll select 1019 share. We click next. We say what letter we want it to be. So as usual, you'll normally find C as your hard drive that has your system information on it. But if we select S, if S is available for Synology, select that properly. Click next. Open mapped drive when it's done, and boom, there you go. So alongside my usual folders of my C drive and all that stuff, we've now got that 1019 added here, as well as both the TerraMater and the Synology being available via DLNA, that wonderful network streaming, primarily used for media. But now you can interact with this NAS as you would any other folder on your PC. So that is how easy it is to do that on a Synology. Let's see how easy it is on the TerraMater. So once again, we select the NAS that we want. We can right click and map network drive. And I think it's interesting to see just how similar those options are. Or we can click map drive there. Let's map a drive. Same login credentials, this time using Windows protocol. Select the drive. In this case, we're going to use the letter, is T available? Yes, T is available. And then from there, we'll make our way into this device. And I believe public is where I've got a nice folder of multimedia. And that will have mapped our network drive. Let's go back into there. And there's our map network drive. There's T. Inside here, we've got multimedia and all of those files that are on the TerraMater NAS. There's the TerraMater IP ending in 99. And there's the TerraMater IP on the web browser. So it's that straightforward and easy, as well as finding the devices on the local area network is simply a case of clicking search. It will search the area network and find the NAS. And again, exactly the same on the Synology. Now, a number of you out there are thinking this a little bit little, a little bit Aldi, and it's just copying something that came before, but that's not always such a bad thing, to have the utility and ease of an expensive brand on a much more affordable platform. So, let's move forward and we'll look at the NASes themselves. This is the user interface of that TerraMaster. All of the TerraMaster NASes have the same interface, but of course different TerraMasters have different hardware. This has got a dual-core Intel, the J3355 CPU, and 2 GB of DDR3 memory. This has got a quad-core Celeron CPU, the J3455, and 4 GB of memory. Both of them can be upgraded to 8 GB, but the Synology arrives at quite an impressive £670 to £680, including the VAT. Whereas this TerraMaster is £450, so a big old difference there of well over £200. Now, if you want, one of the first things you will note between these two is how you interact with the icons. Now, I've installed all of these applications already. If we right click, there's lots of options there. We can go to clipboard, copy paste, upload files, create a new folder that we can drag all of these for a much more tidy desktop, change the wallpaper, and although there are wallpapers available, you can upload your own images as well. So if we change that for something now arbitrarily, let's go for that weird green one, done, nice and quick. From here, you can also go directly into the settings menu, and this is more of a user account settings where you can add users, change passwords and more, but these are very light options compared with the control panel. If we want to go into an option here, say with the control panel, if we click once, nothing will happen. You have to double click the icons, which again is very Windows, but I'm still not quite used to having that in a Windows browser interface, and I would recommend they change that. Whereas if you go into the Synology, if you right click, nothing happens when you right click. If you want to go into an option, you just click once and it will open here on the top bar. Changing the wallpaper, you'll go into user, and all of these options here, you can go into a more advanced mode, but there's still no denying that if you're used to Windows and its more classical control panel, this will seem, a little limited by regard. You can search for individual options here. In order to change the background, we go into theme, and we can change more about the image in the background, and we can change the layout of the buttons, what we see, and how things are displayed. Now, let's go back into that control panel. Both of them have very similar control panels. That's the control panel for the Synology, and again, very Mac-based, very heavy icon use, whereas although there's icons on this, there's still no avoiding, it's a lot more text-based. And that's something I think Windows and Android users will particularly like. Adding users is quite straightforward. You literally just go to click on user, click on create, add the name, test1, gives them a password. No doubt it's going to tell me it has to be more thorough, of course it is. Click next. No limit of storage because we haven't created storage containers on this much. So what their user status is, we're going to make them. You can create different user groups later. There's all the folders on NAS. We can say has access, but no access to video. And then from there, click create. And now we've got a separate user which can then be used to log into this NAS independently on the login screen. And again, we can create user groups for admins or in a business scenario, staff, credit control, logistics, sales, etc. Can all be done there, with shared folders being those drives that we can make network accessible or internet accessible as we see fit. If we go to network services, we can change everything from the IP to using a Wi-Fi dongle and more. We can change everything about this device's network, and it's very chewable and friendly, although it is worth mentioning that it is still more chewable and friendly on the Synology NAS. From here, we've got all of those same options. Let's disable that. And there you can change all of these, but again, it's far more Mac-led with the buttons at the top rather than at the side. We are not going to save those options that I changed by error, but again, it does hold up well. It's a little more text-led than icon-led, and a number of the options that Synology have bundled into separate areas, such as the storage manager, are included. If we go to the storage manager there, in the case of the TerraMaster, are included in this control panel. So from here we can build our RAID configuration, and we can create a brand new RAID with additional drives that are inside. Right now I've only got the one hard drive, and it will do background testing. Now we've initiated a testing, you can probably hear the drive in the background. I'm going to assume you did. And then of course we can see the individual health of the drive while the testing is taking place. And you can do further tests and more. And if we were using a Seagate Ironwolf drive, we would be able to use that Seagate Ironwolf health management here too. From here we can see the storage manager on the Synology, and again, a lot more simple. And again, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing is purely going to be down to your own personal preferences. I quite like the options and the text and the explanations of the TerraMaster, but I have to accept that I'm very much in the minority, and if you're not heavily tech based, you're not going to enjoy a number of those options as much. You can create options such as a hot spare, so you can have a drive in the background, will instantly be picked up by the NAS in the event of one of your drives failing, and SSD caching for when you add further drives. If we go into the desktop here, all those options are available too. We've got everything from the iSCSI to the virtual disk and USB storage once connected. From the general settings, we can change lots of bits and bobs in the background of our device, and all of these are very, very straightforward indeed. Finally, system information tells a lot more about the CPU, the memory, and how much of the device is being used at any given time. We can disable or enable settings one by one, but again, it's still very textual, so given that the TerraMaster brand is a lot heavier in Taiwan than it is here at the moment, although it does have a presence in the West, it's quite strange to see so many text options rather than icons, when Synology have a tendency to do both as much as possible side by side. But the options, although a lot more graphical on the Synology, are almost all available here on the TerraMaster NAS, which is always good. And the more astute may have also noticed on the right hand side system and resource information. We can find out more about the health of our devices here directly from the desktop. We can have options added directly here, and Synology arrives with a handy resource monitor that has a nice GUI that shows you all the information about your device once it's being used. TerraMaster, on the other hand, doesn't seem to have that large analytical back end that we saw there, with a number of the options being absent. What we have here is an on-screen graphical representation of CPU and memory use, whereas in the Synology you can have a much more depthier version at your fingertips. TerraMaster did have one, as we saw earlier on, but I'm not going to say that it's comparable to that one. If we go to system information, for example, from here we can find out more from their resource monitor. And their resource monitor does seem a little bare by comparison, although it does have some interesting options available. Now, moving away from the back end of these devices, let's have a look at the utility. I'm pleased to confirm I've just accidentally closed the Synology, but why not? Let's double click there, go back into it, get rid of that button there. From here, installing applications on both of these NAS platforms is as easy as one another. If we go into the TerraMaster NAS to install applications, we have to just go to the Applications button. In the case of the Synology, because I'm screen recording at the moment, it should be highlighted that I am using a lot of GPU power, so don't hold the Synology responsible for that slight lag in display there. Now, Synology have the Package Center, TerraMaster have the Application Center. From here, you've got beta applications that introduce new software options to your device, as well as third-party and first-party applications across the entire spectrum of what this NAS can do. I've already installed a bunch of apps here, but why don't we install an app now just to show you just how easy it is to install an application. Let's install Git. You click install, and it's as simple as that. It's now installing, and you can see that blue bar in the background is installing that application. While you're doing that, you can install other applications if you so choose. I'll install that one there. And you can run multiple tasks, and multiple users can be accessing this NAS at the same time. In the case of the Synology, the Package Center itself has loads of handy apps that are ready for you to install, with Synology, of course, having a much better coverage in its first-party application range. They have so many more, everything from Synology Chat, which is an alternative to Skype and WhatsApp, Synology Drive, an alternative to Dropbox and Google Drive, Synology Moments, an alternative to Google's own photo apps and Facebook, an alternative to Calendar, an alternative to everything. They have got loads, including surveillance applications with Surveillance Station, Synology Virtual Machine Manager for virtual machines, Active Backup for having a one portal access point to backing up multiple devices. It is borderline limitless, and of course you've got photo, video station, music station, and more. Synology's first-party apps are pretty on the mark. Has to be said, TerraMaster does not have that many first-party apps at this time. If we scroll through, we can see the first-party applications here, which have got the word TerraMaster next to them. But of course, there are a lot more of the third-party applications than there are first-party apps. Background snapshots are available on both devices, as is the Docker application for running multiple kind of micro virtual environments and sandbox environments for applications and more. Very handy, as well as synchronization with third-party platforms such as Google Drive, Dropbox, and more. The NAS Server means that you can stream the content of your NAS to PlayStation, smart TVs, laptops, phones, and more, and WordPress can be installed to support your WordPress server. There's support for Customer Relationship Manager or CRM such as Sugar that are third party that can be installed on the NAS, and if you're a company with a large sales demographic where you need to store information about your users, for future sales and opportunities, that will be very useful, as well as rClone, which lets you synchronize between third-party clouds and your NAS. iTunes Server lets you create a network and internet accessible collection of your music for iTunes to play on your localized devices, and of course Plex Media Server. Great application with a great user interface and pretty much the go-to client and host app for your music. But again, far fewer apps on TerraMaster right now. Whereas on the Synology, there are loads more applications there in the background. And now, there are differences in terms of hardware and design. Synology, if we go back to that resource monitor, I can show you when I'm not clicking buttons in error, due to the slight lag of the recording software, the resource monitor will show you that the Synology seemingly uses more memory. The reason it does that is because the Synology will use available memory as much as possible to cache all the stuff happening in the background, giving you a much smoother user interface. I know it doesn't look like it because of the GPU recording, but like for like, you will find that there will be more memory being utilized by the Synology. Not right now while installing those apps, but again, because the Synology stores and caches information a lot more frequently than the likes of TerraMaster or even QNAP. The result is a much more fluid, smooth experience because the Synology eats up all the memory as much as possible. Once the memory is required, there you go, there's the buffering memory and the cached memory being used there, as you can see. Once that memory is needed for primary applications and storage, the system will automatically flush that memory and make it available. But while it's empty, it will go to great pains to make sure it's all used. On a TerraMaster, it will only use memory as and when it is required, so it will seemingly use less memory, but when it's running tasks, it will use more memory overall. Between these two devices, it's also worth reminding you that this has 2 gig of DDR memory and the Synology has 4. So for those of you watching this that go, oh, the percentage is higher on the TerraMaster, that's why. Now, with regard to the applications, it should be mentioned that the first-party apps on the TerraMaster, although clear and user-friendly, aren't as graphical, which I know won't come as a huge surprise. If we go into the Snapshot Manager, for example, on both of these devices, on the case of the Synology, we go into the Storage Manager for snapshots, but between them, it will come across as a lot more wordy and simplistic on this TerraMaster by comparison. But if you're a techie or anyone with even a pinch of network knowledge, this will not be a problem, would actually be more of a plus, because you have a much more catered and tailored experience open to you on this device. If we make our way into the File Manager, we can have a look at videos and music files and more. If we go into the multimedia there, we can look at pictures and see what happens when we want to look at pictures inside our NAS. So let's have a look at some pictures. Let's double click those. As we can see, we have got this scrolling bar at the bottom. Max that up because these are pretty large pictures. I think these are 4,000 pixels. And we can scroll through them on here. Now again, do remember the GPU software I'm using is going to use a lot of the browser's available power. If we go to the Task Manager, for example, just to let you guys know who are watching this are wondering why things are going a little bit slow, this is the Task Manager on my local PC. And if we go into more details, we'll be able to see a whole host of CPU and memories being utilized by my recording software and Chrome. So don't blame TerraMater or Synology for lag here on the browser. If we make our way back while it minimizes that graphic and closes the application, we can make our way into the video app. Oh no, we're going to public, multimedia, and we'll try to play a video file. Go for movies, go for the world's end. I believe this is a 720p file. And you're not going to hear the audio because I've disabled it for this video. Fast forward a little bit there. It's taking its sweet time there, and again, we could take another look at that, but it's going absolutely bananas. Let that play. As we can see, it's playing here. Hopefully we'll see something on screen any second. And again, the frames per second is dropping, but again, we're going to blame my PC and my recording software. Very simple, it has to be said. It's not exactly the most highly graphical. If we go to an album here, we'll play a song. Champagne Supernova. It's asking me to enable Flash. And then it opens up the internal music player. And again, it didn't seem to like that very much at all. And I think that, again, is something we can put down. But again, still not perfect. And I do think most of you, when you buy TerraMater NAS, are going to end up, because of that, compared with Synology, poorer support of those first-party apps, you're going to end up using that Windows interface to look at those pictures and do all of that stuff as you would on a Windows PC. So again, it's going to do the usual stuff there, but we're not going to bother with that. Now, with the Synology, it's just a much more vibrant interface by comparison, because not only have you got the file management tool, but on top of that, you've got first-party photo and video applications that let you browse and scroll through pictures. Moreover, if we look at things like Moments or Drive, we have got now a one-portal access point to all of our files that, for those that have used Google Drive and Dropbox, will be very, very familiar with. And overall, that's kind of the main thing that Synology has compared with others. It's the idea that you have got a much more pretty user interface open to you, and something that the TerraMater NAS is still working on. You have great hardware and a great price that it arrives on, but it's still a little way to go before it can compete with the likes of Synology on a software level. We'll of course be comparing this against QNAP soon, where we're going to be looking at exactly how it compares with other NAS brands who prioritize hardware over software overall. But without further ado, I'm going to end things here. Hope you've enjoyed this. If you've got any questions about the TerraMater operating system, once again, this was a brief overview of both TerraMater and Synology software, and I highly recommend that you check out my overview of both of these softwares in a great deal more detail in previous videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Click like and subscribe if it helped, and I'll see you next time.